Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today I am doing a video as part of the 2025 IOD spring release. Because I am part of the IOD creative team, they have sent me some of the new products in advance in this beautiful box that is decorated with all of their gorgeous designs. Let's check out what's inside. First up, we have the Countryside Memoirs stamp. I am so excited for this one. It is filled with beautiful French country designs, and they are all in a really great size for doing decor projects. And this is definitely something that you can build with. I know I'm definitely going to be using this one a lot. As soon as I saw this one, I fell in love with this. This is the Sparrows nest mold. It's got beautiful birds. It's got a couple of different nest designs as well to choose from. This is Trimmings 4 and it is stunning. It has beautiful florals, a really lovely thick border. I am definitely going to enjoy using this one. Next we have Catarina. So this is full of beautiful watercolor florals, and there are some beautiful bird designs as well to choose from. And next we have Spring Melody. I really fell in love with this one when I saw the photos of this. I loved the roses. We've got lots of beautiful pinks. We have some bunnies as well. We have some twirl in there as well, and lots of beautiful patterns and trims. So much to choose from. This is going to be perfect for Easter crafting and spring crafting. Now let's get into the crafts. For my first project, I'm going to be using Farmhouse linen chalk paint by Paint Couture on this 30 by 40 centimeter wood blank. Now I am going to be treating the outside section like a frame. We are going to be creating a French country artwork with this piece. So I'm laying down an even coat of the Farmhouse linen over the entire project. And then when that was dry, I took out the beautiful new Spring Melody paint inlay. As you can see, there are so many options for this. You've got borders, you've got these beautiful emblems and crest designs, some absolutely stunning florals. This is definitely going to be perfect for spring crafts. They are beautifully muted colors too, so they're more of a pastel palette that you can work with. And there are 2 sheets of the florals, which is going to be very handy, and you've got 2 sheets of different colored bunny twirl design. I'm then going to go in and apply another even coat of the French linen that I already have down. When you're working with paint inlays, you want to apply them into wet paint or clear coat. I'm then going to press my paint inlay down into my wet paint design side down, so the grid should be facing back up at you, and I'm just using my fingers to smooth the paint inlay down into the paint. I'm not pressing too hard because I don't want to sort of squish the paint, but I do want to smooth it down. I do have some wrinkles. If this bothers you, I would suggest that perhaps you mist your inlay first. I'm using an IOD brayer to smooth it out, and then I am misting it with my mister. The water helps to activate those paint pigments, and then I'm just using a wet wipe to apply a little bit more pressure and moisture. I let my inlay dry completely, and then I came back in with my water mister. This is going to help that paper to release. I gave it about 60 seconds, and then I came in and started to slowly pull that paint inlay away. If you feel any resistance, make sure you wet it a little bit more, give it a bit more time, and then continue to remove it. So I will get another use out of this paint inlay, so I'll set it off somewhere to dry. I then came in with Paint Couture's Extreme Garden Satin, and I am very lightly brushing that clear coat over the top of the inlay. I'm not using heavy strokes, and I'm not going back over the same area many times because you can get smearing. If you're worried about that, I would suggest that you use a spray sealer. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Light Brown Sugar Antique Ink Glaze, and I'm going to be adding that to the center over the top of our beautiful 12 paint inlay that we've just added. And then I'm going in and dabbing at that glaze with a wet wipe. I'm dabbing at it so that it gives it more of an aged look. This actually reminded me of beautiful old wallpaper, especially with the glaze sinking into some of that texture that was created by the paint and the paint inlay. And I'm going to continue adding that until I have covered the entire inner surface. Obviously, if this is a bit too grungy for you, you could leave the glaze step out. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown Glaze, and I'm going to be adding that around the outside frame of this blank. So as I said, I was treating it like a frame, and I want the outside to look like an old worn wooden frame. And the Van Dyke Brown Glaze is darker than the light brown sugar glaze, so I'm loving the contrast of this darker brown with the light brown sugar glaze in the center. So I'm just going to continue to work my way around, applying that glaze over the entire outside frame. When that was dry, I took out IOD's frames to mold, and I'm going to be dusting the larger frame design with cornstarch. This is going to help to make sure my clay doesn't stick. And then I'm going to be using some IOD air dry clay. I'm just pressing it out into a similar shape to what the mold is. And then I'm going to use my brayer to help spread that clay, and then my fingers to keep pushing that clay into the mold, just spreading it out until I have the entire design filled. The micro rim is going to help me get a lovely clean edge and line around the outside. The brayer definitely was a big help with this. I then flexed the mold, flipped it over, and gravity helped me get that lovely frame design out. I'm then going to position this over on the framed art that we've already started, and then I'm going to take out the Sparrows nest mold, and I'm going to dust the larger of the two nest design with cornstarch, and then work my IOD air dry clay into that nest design, just pushing that excess clay out. And then when I'm happy with that, I will flex that mold and pull out my casting. And as you can see, the design is so intricate and so detailed. I cast another one of the frames that I've already done, and then I'm going to be casting the smaller bird's nest from that sparrow's nest mold, working that clay into the design, just repeating those same steps. And then when I'm happy with that, I will flex it and pull that design out. I decided that I would rearrange and have the nest without the eggs up the top and have the one with the eggs down the bottom. I then went in and started adding my Sealy's Quickset wood glue to the back of each of my castings, and I glued them in place. It's definitely a good idea to do this while your molds are still wet. The next day I came in with Paint Couture's Light Brown Sugar Antique Ink Glaze, and I'm going to go over the top of the entire frame. At this point I wasn't 100% sure where I was going in terms of the color scheme on these frames and on the nests. So I thought it was a good idea to bring in that light brown sugar glaze to tie in with the background. And then I came in with a wet wipe and I'm pulling it off the high points. I'm also going to be adding the same glaze to the framed nest underneath as well. When that was dry, I came in with Paint Couture's Bronze Luxe Metallic. Originally, I thought that perhaps I was just going to be adding that bronze to the raised ornate details on the frame. But once I started adding it, I realized I wanted to bring in more of that bronze, so I ended up painting the entire outside section of the frame with that beautiful bronze to make them look like they were antique bronze frames that had been put in this artwork. I was sort of imagining that this was going to go in some sort of like a French cottage, and this was a maybe like a botanical style artwork, a study on nests. and bird life, and I felt like adding this bronze really fit with the era that a lot of that artwork comes from. I then came in with Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown Antique Ink Glaze, and I'm applying it just to the nests. I wanted the nest to have a little bit of a darker color. This is also going to tie in a little bit better with the frame that we have around the outside. And then I took out a wet wipe, and I'm going to wipe some of that back. So we've got a few different tones, lightening it up a little bit. And I'm going to repeat the same process for the nest down the bottom. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Vintage Moss acrylic mineral paint, and I am just adding that over the top of the leaves. This particular color is pretty similar to Autumn Sage chalk paint. I'm going over the top. I don't mind if I don't have full coverage. I want this to look distressed and aged, so it's okay if my brush skips a few areas. I then moved on to the nest down the bottom, and this one had a few more leaves. I really love the idea of bringing in these colors. I felt like it was probably a little bit flat with just having the reds and the bronzes and the wood tones. So adding this green in again adds to that almost botanical style artwork. Once that was dry, I then came in with a wet wipe because I want to distress it back just a little bit. Again, add to that vintage worn look. Next, I was thinking about leaving the eggs as is, but decided to use Paint Couture's Angel Eyes mineral paint instead, almost like perhaps they were robin's eggs. I'm going in with very little paint. I'm actually tapping off a lot of the excess on a paper towel so it's not too intense. Remember, I want these to look vintage. So I'm just going over the top of each of the eggs, and then I just used my glaze brush without adding any extra to go over the top. I then took out IOD's Conservatory Labels mold, and I am going to be casting the inner design of one of those labels. So always remember that you can do that. You can use bits and pieces of your molds, and then I'm going to pull that clay out, and I'm going to be making two of these. I want these to look like little labels. And then I took out my stamps that I had in my stash. I'm just going to be making imprints into that clay. I want it to say number 1 up the top, and then number 2. So if you're wanting to do this and you want the imprint look, remember to do this while your clay is still wet. If you, however, wanted to do the stamped design with ink, obviously you would let this dry and then come in a little bit later. Once I was happy with how those looked, I added some of my Sealy's Quickset wood glue to the back of each of them, and then I glued them into place. When the labels were dry, I came in with some Van Dyke Brown Antique Ink Glaze. I'm really working it into the impressions, and then I'm using a wet wipe to wipe back the excess, and I'll be repeating the same process for the same little label down the bottom. And here's a look at our bird nest artwork. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. The bird toile goes perfectly with the nest molds. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For my second project, I'm going to be using this foam round that I found for just 50 cents. It's about 30 centimeters in diameter, and then I'm going to be using the beautiful new trimmings for mold. I'm specifically going to be using the larger floral trim design. I'm dusting that with cornstarch. This is very intricate, and then I'm going to work the IOD air dry clay into that design, just sort of spreading it out. This is very wide, so this is definitely the widest trim design that IOD have done, and it is just so stunning. Definitely a new favorite. I'm going to use my brayer to help work that clay into the wider design, and then again just going around the edges, tidying those up. I'm then going to flex it, flip the mold over, and roll it back to release my casting. I'm then going to start shaping it to the wreath blank design, and I ended up having to add a little cut into the trim so that I could fold it over the top of itself, and this is something I had to repeat when I added another one of those trim designs. I ended up casting 3 of the trimmings for floral trim there, and each time I'm shaping it to the wreath form that I have while it is still wet so that I can bend and manipulate it. And then here I am trimming off the excess because I don't need that much of an overlap. So I'm just cutting around that, and then I'm going to adjust how that sits so that you can't see that sort of jagged cut as easily. I'm going to remove each of the castings and add glue to the backs of them and then glue them in place. Next, I took out IOD's bows mold. I'm going to dust the smaller of the two bows with cornstarch, and then I'm going to work my air dry clay into that smaller bow design. I really wanted something that was a bit dainty, so the larger one definitely wasn't really the right scale. So I'm just going to position that up the top, and then I decided that I would cast the larger of the ribbons, however, because I wanted it to look like they were almost sort of falling down or wrapping around the wreath. So I'm going to cast one of each of those, and they are going to be positioned either side of the bow up the top. Once I was happy with how that looked, I added my wood glue to the back of the bow mold and glued everything down. I gave it a few hours, and then I came in with Paint Couture's Farmhouse linen chalk paint. Now I'm painting over the top of my castings while they are still wet so that I can reduce the risk of cracking and shrinking. The next day I came in with Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown Glaze, and I'm going to start really working that into all of the details of this absolutely stunning mold. I'm using my mister to help that glaze move and sink down into all of those crevices, and then I'm wiping back the top sections with a wet wipe. I'm going to repeat that process and continue adding that glaze over the entire piece. This is going to help create a more vintage look. It's going to definitely give us that worn look, creating the depth as well so that we can really see all of the details of these castings. I then came in with Vintage Moss acrylic mineral paint, and I'm going to go over the top of all of the leaf designs and the stem designs that I can see. This was a little bit time consuming, but I am not going for perfect here. I want this to perhaps even look like a stone wreath that's been out in the weather, so I don't need it to hit every area perfectly. So I'm just going to continue to work my way around, finding all of those little leaf details and adding that vintage moss. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's French Rose mineral paint, and I'm going to be going over the top of the floral designs that are in this trimming mold. And I'm sort of running my brush over on different angles. I don't want that paint to sink all the way down into all of the details. I still want to be able to see that Van Dyke Brown glaze to be able to create that depth and also that aged look. But I am going to continue to work my way around, adding it to each of the florals that I see. I am sticking to a bit more of a neutral color palette here, but you could definitely come in with more colors to make this a more colorful piece. If I inspire you to try any of the Paint Couture products used in today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. I will put it in the description and on the screen. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. When the paint was dry, I started dry brushing on some Farmhouse linen over the top of everything. So I'm getting some of that Farmhouse linen chalk paint on my brush, dabbing off the excess on a paper towel, and then running my brush really lightly over the high points of these castings. So I've still got the depth of the glaze, but adding this definitely gives it a bit more of an aged finish. It's also highlighting some of those higher details as well. When that was dry, I came in with some Bronze Luxe Metallic, and I'm just dabbing some of that onto some of the center parts of the flowers. I want to add a little bit of shine, bring in another color. I'm also going to go in and find some of the smaller little berry designs. Not all of them though. I do want to have a little bit of variation. I want some of those to remain light. Next, I took out Paint Couture's Ballet Slipper Luxe Metallic, and I'm going to start adding that over the top of the bow. I wanted to bring in a little bit more color, and I do end up sort of sitting with this for a little while. I ummed and ahed about it. I felt like adding more pink wasn't exactly what this piece needed, but you don't know till you try. So I added that in. Again, I'm actually trying not to cover the Van Dyke Brown Glaze. I still want to see that. I then took out Oyster Pearl Luxe Metallic, and I'm going to add that to the ribbon tails that I have draping around the edge of the wreath. And once I started adding this, I decided that I was going to be going back in and adding that over the top of the bow. The pink, it just sort of, I felt like it sort of faded in a little bit with the pink flowers that I had on the wreath. So again, it's definitely a project that sort of evolved as I was working on it. So I ended up letting the ballet slipper dry completely. And while that was happening, I went in and added some of that oyster pearl to some of the little berries. Again, this is going to give us a little pop of white. It's going to break up some of the design a little bit. And then I came in and started going over the top of the bow. And here's a look at our finished spring wreath. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. That Trimmings for mold is so stunning. Definitely a new favorite. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For my final project, I'm going to be using this hardcover book that I thrifted. Now, unfortunately, they did have a little bird design on the front, which kind of goes with our theme, but I didn't want it distracting, so I'm going to use the other side. I'm going to be priming my surface with Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer in white. I'm going to be applying 2 coats of this. This is going to help my paint stick, and it's also going to prevent the brown cover or the gold writing on the spine from coming through. I am going to be adding something to the spine, so that wasn't so much of a worry. I then started working my clay into the Trimmings 4 mold, and I am adding it to the other design that we have not used yet. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to flex it, and then just like we have before, I'm going to be flipping it over and rolling that mold back. I'm then going to add some of my Celia's Quickset wood glue to the other side of the casting, and then I'm going to add it to the spine of the book. I then went very carefully around the edge of the mold and molded it to the spine surface so that it looked like it was part of the book. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's French Putty mineral paint, and I'm going to be adding that over the top of the entire piece. For this project, I'm going to be using the beautiful new Catarina Transfer, and this is filled with stunning watercolor florals and 2 beautiful bird images. I knew as soon as I saw the birds that I wanted to use them on the front of a book, so I'm going to be cutting those out so that I know how big I am going to need them to be. And then I'm going to take out the Countryside Memoirs stamp. So just giving you a closer look at these. You didn't get a close look at the start, but as you can see, there are so many beautiful little intricate designs to choose from. I'm loving the smaller scale of these. Perfect for decor crafts, perfect if you like to do scrapbooking or card making. And what you want to do is grab some 220 grit sandpaper when you first open your stamps and lightly go over the top of them. You only ever do this once in the life of your stamps. It's just going to help that ink to stick a little bit better. I took out this beautiful floral border design, but it's not quite the right size. So I am going to break it up. I'm going to be adding some ink to the bottom right hand corner design, and then I'm going to position it on my book. So I'm just going to have to piece the design together because I want the same design, but I want it to be a larger scale, if that makes sense, on my book. So I'm going to be adding ink to the different parts of this stamp design so that I can stretch it. So I'm going to go to the center part of that framed border and add that. So basically I'm using the whole thing but sort of spreading it out. I'm going to press down and add that and just keep working my way around until I have added this entire design. So keep this in mind. If you like a design, a stamp design, you can add ink to bits and pieces of it. You can stretch it out and make it go that little bit further. Now I'm applying my stamps over the top of a mineral paint that has a clear coat. So if I make a mistake, I can go in and I can remove that ink. I don't know if you can do that with other inks, but I know that IOD Permanent Black ink and the other IOD ink colors can definitely be wiped back over the top of a sealed surface. Next, I'm going to take out this lovely bow stamp design, and I'm going to add some black ink to that and situate that in between the top two sections of our border. And I'm just going to press that down, and I'm just using the little plastic film that comes with the stamps. I'm then going to use this other little flourish design here and add that down the bottom. Next, I took a text design from the Ephemeral type stamp by IOD. I'm just going to ink that part up, wipe back any bits that I don't want, and then I'm going to press that down up the top. So this is going to look like our book title. Now I forgot to wipe away the ink from the comma, but I'm just going to go in with a wet wipe and I can wipe that back. Next, I'm going to add the beautiful bird transfer from the Catarina Transfer, and I'm going to start rubbing that. I like to go over the whole design first to make sure it's stuck down, and then I pick up a corner and I start pulling that away as I'm rubbing. I am applying it to a paint that has a built-in sealer, so I found that this came off really easily. Once I finished transferring the image, I used the carrier sheet to further burnish it down. Next, I decided I wanted to add a little bit more text, so I'm just using that same stamp from the Ephemeral type stamp design. I'm wiping back ink from the parts that I don't want, and then I'm going to position that down the bottom. And then once I've done that, I also decided that I would add the little year that's down the bottom as well. To give my book more of a vintage look, I went in and did a little bit of wet distressing. I did have to rub a little bit harder to get through, and I just want to reveal some of that white underneath, so that's going to add to that worn book look. And then I came in with Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin, and I'm just going to apply that over the front cover to seal in my transfer and my ink. You don't really have to do this for the ink, but as I was already adding it to the transfer, I did the whole thing. I then took out Paint Couture's Light Brown Sugar Glaze, and I'm applying that over the top of my dry clear coat. Again, we want to add to that vintage look, so I'm going in and then dabbing that back with a wet wipe. It's actually going to look a little bit like age spots as well. I really love that technique. I then added some to the spine of the book, and I am going to add it to the back as well, so basically covering the whole thing in this light brown sugar glaze and then wiping that back from the high points. I also decided to add the glaze to the edges of the book pages to add to the look of age. When that was dry, I added some of Paint Couture's Bronze Luxe Metallic to the spine of the book. At this point, I was just running it over the top of the high points, but as I was doing this, it just didn't feel like quite enough, so I ended up going in and I painted the entire spine with that Bronze Luxe Metallic. It really made the spine of the book and that stunning Trimmings for mold a feature. Finally, I added some of that Bronze Luxe Metallic to the stamped bow design. I'm just going in and dabbing that on. If I go out of the lines of the stamp design, I can come in with a wet wipe and I can wipe back that excess. But I really like this. I think it's a nice touch. I think it looks like it's sort of like a gilded design on the book cover. If you wanted, you could use a different metallic for this step if bronze wasn't to your taste, but I felt like it sort of tied the spine of the book in with the rest of the front cover. I also added a little bit to that flourish centerpiece design down the bottom. And here's a look at our finished book. I love how this turned out. The Countryside Memoirs and the Catarina Transfer and the Trimmings for Mould all go perfectly together. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video and that it's inspired you to get crafting with the beautiful new 2025 spring release from IOD. Let me know if you had a favorite project from today. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. I want to thank IOD for sending me the beautiful new spring products to craft with. Make sure you check out the Spring 2025 release playlist. It is linked in the description below. You will find a lot of other videos by other creators to get you inspired. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find most of the products used today, including the new release items, on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.